Welcome back to Gale Force Wins Season 4.
Well, folks, welcome back to another edition of Gale Force Wins. As you know, my name is Jerry Carew, if you've been following along. I'm really excited today to have a conversation with someone that I got to know approximately 12 years ago now, or 11 years ago?
12.
12 years ago. Wow, time flies when you're having fun. Jeff Lush and I worked together at the Telegram, and we did some pretty innovative things. And not to take away from his introduction, but I will tell you that one of the brightest minds in digital marketing that I ever encountered, and certainly helped move the needle for the Telegram, and we'll delve into all that. But firstly, Jeff, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the Gale Force Wins followers?
Big time viewer, first time, long time. But
Sounds open line.
Exactly, yeah. So my name's Jeffrey Lush. I work for a company I started called Rockbound Marketing, which is it's the banner I operate my marketing consulting work out of. Primarily digital marketing with some media strategy focused in the vertical of injury law.
Well, that's fascinating. Yeah. So, what we do, we delve into your journey. And
good.
I want to talk a little bit about the beginnings of your life. You know, what I did learn about you, you're very, very, very good at business development. Where did you start, your education?
So I'm from St. John's, Newfoundland. And then I went to business school here at Memorial. Which in the co-op program, which is like an awesome program. It gets you a lot of like professional work experience at a time when you probably like aren't really hireable or employable relative to the market. So I got a lot of great exposure there, which allowed me to kind of graduate and be pretty ready for the workforce. I think. I mean, you would have interviewed me right when I came out of school, and you would probably have your own kind of take on that. But yeah, and then I started at the Telegram and TC Media with a great team. Yourself were kind of obviously in the leadership there, and and then just kind of hit the ground running, learning a ton. Because I came out of school thinking like I know a lot, I'm savvy about business stuff, and then like 3 days in the Telegram, I was like, oh, like I don't know like 80% of what I need to be successful. But then obviously the infrastructure of the Telegram at the time, really helped kind of build on what I kind of brought to that, which was awesome.
I think, just to comment on education, because both of us did a business degree, I think what it falls down on is not really readying us for the chaos of business.
Yeah.
And I think when we come out after reading books and everything, you expect it to be a lot more organized and precise. In fact, as you know, it is very chaotic. And
well, you're doing the case study on like General Electric and like, should we sell the finance division? And then you show up and it's like, actually, no, like we need to get 8,000 flyers across the road. Like there's, like the stuff you learn is like so high level, and like you may work your whole career and never get to make those decisions. So you've done all these reps on stuff that like is good to know and helps you, but in like a media sales environment, it doesn't really, or at least speaking from my experience, like there was just stuff I like never considered or whatnot in school at the time. And then there's times it helps you, like, you come across an advertiser who like, wants to sell things, wants to have a successful sale. And you're like, well, back up. Like, who's the target audience? What's your marketing strategy? Like, why does any of this exist? And then you're able to kind of like, piece that together in a framework that works for them. And then obviously the business school training helps with that. But yeah, no, I remember being very overwhelmed. My first I didn't leave my part-time job for 3 months. Like I worked in retail part-time when I started the Telegram. And I had worked there for 7 years, and I was like, well, I'm not leaving this job until I know that the Telegram is like pretty rock solid. And so I remember like coworkers at the Telegram were like, you still work part-time? I was like, yeah, because I don't know if this is going to work.
Well, on that note, tell us a little bit about that part-time role that you had, because my interpretation, after when you came on, I had 15 years experience, and you came in running. And I think that part-time job, from the conversations you and I had, you were trained very well in customer service, would you say?
Yeah, so I started working at Sport Chek, which is like a Canadian sporting goods store. I started working there when I was 16, and I worked there for 7 years. And yeah, it was a full commission sales role. And like, obviously at 16, like, you really don't know like anything about anything, like it's just like a job, and like showing up is like a miracle. So yeah. And then, yeah, so they did like, again, a place with like a lot of good leadership, a lot of good management. Yeah. And then so then they like trained me about, ask the right questions, listen, don't be afraid to go up to people, like try to get to the core of like what brought them in today. And then that was the same then once I ended up in media sales. It was like getting the question of like, what is the decision process? Like what's going to make, like what piece of information can you get that will lead to a sale? And yeah, so like, you work there, for 7 years, or you work at the Sport Chek for 7 years in a commission environment, you learn, that like, you're like, if you sell more, you get paid more. And that's an incentive that like sounds very, very fundamental to you and I as like sales people. But, as a high school kid, when your other friends are like, oh, I need to get a few extra hours because I can, get a bigger paycheck. Where I was like, oh, if I just like maximize the hours I have, I can just make more money.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was cool.
Well, Jeff, I started my career in 1993, and I said this to a class last week at MUN. A guest speaker came in and said, sales is the engine that drives the economy. Here's what I regret. I don't remember who that person was, and it's probably immaterial, but that and the way the preamble went into saying that, to your point, you're right. And my wife's always said to me, oh, I wish I had a job where the more effort you put in, the more return you get. Now, it doesn't always line up that way, does it?
No.
On a commissions.
No. Many a Wednesday evening in January stood up on the shoe wall waiting for someone to come in and being like, when's it going to happen? But then you get that Saturday in September or that Saturday in November where, you sell $3,000-4,000 in 7 hours and you get 5% of that. That's a lot of money when you're, it's a lot of money when you're 16, 17 years old. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was great. Like you learned to be experimental in your sales approach and pitches. You learn to talk to like all kinds of people and stuff like that. So yeah, like when I started at the Telegram, I had the business foundation for Memorial, which is excellent. And then I had like some experience in sales, but it was a different kind of sales, obviously. But yeah, so then, I felt like relative as prepared as like I could be at that age. But like, yeah, I still needed like, I don't think I really was great, or I don't think I was really like comfortable at like what I'm doing at the Telegram until I've been there like a year or a year and a half. Yeah.
Well, it's funny you say that. I think for me, and one of the biggest challenges for me, and I was in a print role first, was I went from radio into the Telegram. The Telegram had daily deadlines. The organization that you had to have, frankly, for me, was overwhelming. And frankly, it killed quite a few people that were trying to make it in that industry.
Oh, yeah.
But I would say for me, it took 2 years, right? Just hang on a second. This is the issue when you have your setup in a studio. What happened for me was, I think 2 years in, I finally realized, and I used to go in on the weekends, and a Sunday would be the day to prepare for the week because I just couldn't get ahead of it all. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about how you say it took a year and a half. What did you do to get yourself organized?
So first it was just like figuring out like the seasonality and the rhythm of like your clients and your other colleagues and like what types of sales are coming on or what types of what types of sales and promotions are coming on, and then just like you had said, like you had like Sunday getting ready for the week, or like realizing like, okay, Monday sales meeting, get set up for the week. Wednesday, a smaller team meeting, really focus in, and just like getting that rhythm and understanding, mostly the seasonality and like the operating rhythm. And then just like, we were adding new products so rapidly that like, as soon as you figured out one product, there was another one coming down the pike. So so that's why I felt like that. And it all just felt very fast, like everything, because you had like multiple deadlines, multiple service areas. There's a fair bit of turnover, like with like new reps coming on and trying to train people up, and it just didn't feel like I was kind of established there, for that period of time. And then also like, you like when you have work terms, there's no real expectation or obligation to like be good or deliver anything. Like if you're a great work term student or if you're a bad one, like I don't know if that actually matters.
Yeah.
And then in my part-time job, I was, you're somewhere 7 years, like you're obviously relied upon, you're a leader there. So that's like great. And then you kind of come to a new place where there's people that have been there 30 years or 25 years, and like you're never going to usurp them as a leader. So also trying to like relearn how to be a follower or how to be a good teammate when you're not like, when you're not like relied upon. That was like super weird.
Yeah.
I remember because again, in business school, everyone's kind of treated as a leader. Everyone's treated as being the focal point. So that was another thing where it was like, okay, well, I'm like, there's a sales team of 14 plus the 4 digital people. So I'm like 16th or like 18th, and just like relearning that and like considering that was a real like wake up call, I would say.
Well, you know what? You bring back a lot of memories for me. When I think about the industry, the media, the legacy media, I mean, when I started on radio, you had one station to sell. Some people had the ability to sell on multiples at VOCM, but you're right. I mean, I think visually the printed product when I started was it.
Yeah.
And then, Facebook was founded in 2004, I think. And
around then. Yeah.
I was looking at a chart of newspaper revenue, and right around the founding of Facebook, newspaper revenue started to do that. So you came on in what year again?
2012.
2012. So you're, 9 years into that. And the revenue is already in significant decline. But I think you're right. What the challenge was, it's one thing to sell this mug. It's another thing to sell 25 versions of that mug and having to know all the nuances of it. It was complex, wasn't it?
Oh, incredibly yeah. And it's not just like we were going out to the clients and saying like, hey, like buy this or interest in this. They were coming to us being like, can you do this? I see this elsewhere. So not only were you trying to like kind of innovate with your own product mix, but you're also getting feedback from customers and having to like on your feet be like, well, like I'll have to see or whatever. And it was, certainly by that point in 2012, there had been an evolution in digital that you could already, the sea change, if it wasn't already happening, you could see it. Like you were like, oh yeah, like obviously the classified department was like the first kind of indicator, and it was like, oh yeah. And then it was like, oh, well, like, Saturday, Friday, like different days were getting in trouble, different ad units. Like, yeah, it was really starting to, it was certainly starting to change when I was there. But like whether you or I saw it, which I think we did because we were in a digital sales role, but getting like other coworkers to see it or getting your advertisers to see it and be like, hey, like, maybe instead of doing that half-page color on section D of a Saturday, like, hey, like maybe we should go black and white and smaller and do some digital or try to reach our whole audience. Yeah. Like trying to understand that there was this whole audience and not just the paper and not just the website. I think that was hard for a lot of people to accept and understand to the level that we probably wanted them to.
Well, I still want to delve more into your journey, but I think this journey we're on here right now is one that we did together. And I think back, it's funny, last week when I presented to the MUN business class, I have a lot of old documentation and videos. I used to shoot videos of a lot of things. Anyway, the mission and vision one that I posted last week, I noticed in it, I made a comment about, to you were in the room.
Yeah, I was in the room, yeah.
If you notice that one comment I made, print is important. So the point I want to make here in front of you today is that when I reflect on that, I was in an awkward position where some people within the newspaper industry were saying I was working too hard to hasten the demise of the paper. And then when I present to you guys as digital leaders, I'm saying, you've got to honor the print. And frankly, I shouldn't have done that,
Yeah, it was I think you were in an incredibly tough spot because obviously you had however many digital sales reps, and like we were all focused on digital because that's where we primarily like made our earnings and our living. So like, but then I also I think I can speak for myself, I can't speak for others, but like I understood that like, we're not a $30 million revenue business without print at that time. So like if print went down 40%, that's like a massive change in like the newsroom, the amount, like just everything. So I don't know, I thought you were in a tough spot because we had to get people transitioning to digital. We had to get them realizing that. And we were doing a great job of that. Like I think our adoption rate was really high. And then I would go on to work at other news pubs and like really be able to appreciate the adoption levels that we had. But, we had to kind of say like, this print thing, like this isn't going to be as relevant as it is today in 18 months time, in 6 months time. And like, how do you say that effectively, or how do you say that without upsetting the apple cart? And I think that was like the biggest challenge we always had.
Yeah.
You specifically as the leader of the whole department, and then us as reps having to like kind of continue that messaging to the print sales reps in one-on-one settings and stuff. Because like, as much as we were motivated by digital and that's how we made our money, yeah, like if they sold, you know, a Saturday full page ad, like that made their quarter type thing in a lot of ways. So like, you know, if we're in there saying, hey, instead of that half page color, go quarter page black and white, well, that like, you know, like that like nukes their, you know, their sales. So it was hard. It was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You know, and I tell you, at the time, and I don't know if I ever said this to you, I was researching a lot of pure play, they're called, digital things, because Facebook didn't care about any print. Being encumbered by a print legacy piece was really tough.
Yeah,
right?
like I always viewed it as like, print gave us the opportunity to like take big risks and do lots of things and like be really aggressive on margin and price, because like we were able to sell, like, you know, whether it was Google ads or social media ads, and have this like really low management fee. And I remember like some other competitors in the market and like in our local market would say like, oh, you know, your rates are so low on digital stuff, like you're murdering the industry. And like we could do that and we could compete in those because, you know, we had the big print product. Like Saturday comes out and that's, you know, a $50 or $100 or $200,000 event. So because of that high margin, we could go to an advertiser and say, look, like we'll only charge you, you know, a low management fee. And then we were able to kind of get them sampling, and then they were sampling with us.
Yeah.
So then, you know, now did we do that as effectively as we could now in hindsight? Like maybe, like probably, but like that was the nice thing. Like as much as it was an albatross in some ways, like it was a big challenge, like to shift revenue, it also allowed us to like come at the market with such a position of strength.
Well, I remember the numbers, Jeff, and just so you know, the Telegram was at around 50 million in revenue.
Yeah.
And you know what the decline was? 1 year, I can't remember what year it was, 20%. So that's $10 million evaporated.
Oh, crazy. Yeah.
You know, we had an incredibly successful digital team, and I think we brought in at 2.4 million.
Yeah, exactly.
So we had declined 10 on print. We had gained 2.4. You don't need to be a mathematician to figure out this is upside down. Right?
Oh yeah, well, and yeah, no, I mean, and that was exactly the problem was that people were leaving, you know, whether it was print, radio, TV, at a rate, and we as the local team and any sales team, this isn't just us, but like you can't capture that decline with one team. Whereas like if someone was like, okay, well, you know, I'm going to go down, instead of four print ads a month, I'm going to go down to 3 and take that money and put it in Google. But I'm not necessarily going to put that in Google with you.
Yeah.
So they're still advertising. I still have that revenue out in the market, but we just weren't capturing it.
Yeah.
Which is like, that's the story, really.
And it's, we'll get off this topic if we're boring people, but when I realized too, then the head office got involved. Remember the multi-platform bundle and kind of forcing everyone to spend money digitally, and it didn't become a choice anymore. And I found it all very chaotic, you know?
Well, that one was tough because anytime you're like, you know, anytime you're forcing your advertiser into doing something that they don't want to do, like, that's tough, and like you only really get to do that when you have like monopolistic power or like a product that's undeniable. You know, I think about you know, I mean, I think about like the utility company or like the cell phone companies. Like they can come to you and be like, look, like we're gonna hit you with this 5G premium. If you want 5G, good. If not, like you're not gonna pay it or whatever, and then you get slower speed. Whereas us, we went to market with this, and clients were like, well, I don't want to do it. I don't want to pay that, and then we didn't have the monopoly power to enforce that. So, you know, that was an interesting, but I mean, no, that I don't think that sped up decline, but I don't really remember either. I don't think it did, but I thought at the time, I was like, you know, I don't think we can be forcing advertisers to, like, I don't think we're in a position to be forcing anyone to do anything.
No.
But, I mean, you know, head office is going to head office.
Yeah, we in some ways we weren't that popular, and anyone who's watching this who was at head office knows we went to the beat of our own drum, and frankly, we were very successful doing that. I'm going to get away from the conversation around that, but I will ask you this. So I'm going to get into your career after the Telegram, but let me ask you this: what are the key takeaways that you brought to your next career from what you did with us?
Certainly the teamwork piece, like certainly working with others and like being a better listener and yeah, just making sure like all the voices at the table are heard. I think that was big. I think the sense of urgency at the Telegram, like in terms of like whether it was deadlines or sales initiatives, just anything, like even like picking a lunch spot at the Telegram was like, well, it got to be now, like we got to be there by like just like how urgent, like, and that's something I find even now, like when I'm working with people and stuff, and they'll like ask a question, like they'll be like, oh, do you think we can get this done this week? And I'm like, well, it's Monday, it's like obviously, like, what do you mean? Like I'm gonna try to get that done by the end of the day, like.
Listen, you're hit on a nerve there, because having come from what you and I experienced with the daily deadlines, if there was a criticism of some of what I see right now, and I've engaged with a lot of people in the last 4 years, is that sense, I wouldn't call it complacency, but the lack of urgency.
Yeah.
It's
maddening
to me.
It is. Oh, it's incredible. And like, I find now when I work with people, like I get a bit of a bad rap in terms of how I'm just like, well, like, where is that? Like, why isn't that done? Like, and I'm just like, geez, like, am I being difficult or hard to work with, or should all this just be done? Like, and I think also like the Telegram is or any like print environment is a really good example of like, don't let like perfect being the enemy of good enough. And like, we were always just great at like getting out a product, and it was always like, I always was really proud of it and stuff, but sometimes like just getting the ad out that says, look, we got a sale this weekend and you got to come in and see it, and you don't need to list exactly, just like get the message out, like just get something out the door and keep feeding the content machine. And yeah, no, I definitely agree, like there is some type of lack of urgency or lack of like I don't know, like there's only 52 Saturdays in the year, and you got to fill that Saturday with as many ads until you get to the next one. And I think that goes into social media, Google ads, display ads, SEO, web development, like just get it out there. And actually, and I guess Gale Force does a lot of that with the rapid production piece. Like you've really kind of taken that ethos and injected it into a business, a video business.
Thank you, Jeff, for saying that, because as you're talking, I'm thinking about all the work we've done. One in particular was in Mississauga. We actually went from 8 a.m. to about 6 p.m. and we did 44 interviews in one day.
Yeah, that's a year for a lot of companies, you know.
I will say this: a lot of people struggle to understand what it is we're doing, because if we can come in one day, do an entire year's content, it's astounding. And then what happens is people are like, "Oh my God, that's a lot of work now to manage it all." But we've got a process in the back, and I won't bore anyone with that, of how to help you understand. It goes into a Google sheet. You know exactly who said what when. But you're right. If I reflect on my career, having daily deadlines, it's caused us to be able to do this. But you're right. I mean, if you're in a marketing business, what I felt challenging, and I ended up in the car business, as you know, I would get up in the morning and I'm like, okay, I've taken a picture of the left tire. Last week I took a picture of the right tire. I took a picture of the steering wheel. Oh my God, what am I going to put out there now?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So if there's an entity out there that can create a lot of content quickly, then getting it out there is really important. And I do see a lot of people kind of waiting and evaluating, and they'll have 10 meetings around it. Let's get moving.
Yeah, just like and I find a lot of times like people forget that like for the average retailer, for the average business, your audience doesn't know anything about what you do. So any tidbit of information has value.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know, in the injury law space, like no one thinks about injury law until you're a victim of a motor vehicle accident. And then all you think about is injury law, and every element of your journey is worthwhile content.
So let's dig into that. So you left the Telegram, you went to Alberta.
I moved.
Tell us about that.
So I moved to Edmonton, Alberta, and started working at Metro Edmonton, which is a daily that the Torstar Corporation owned at the time. It's since closed. And so that's just a free daily, Monday to Friday. It was, you know, one pub, one set of deadlines. It was like, obviously the Toronto Star is like an incredible company and incredible publishing entity, but you know, it's just a different scale. Their Edmonton operation was a different scale than what I had been to in St. John's at the Telegram, where we had, 14 weeklies, 2 dailies, a ton of websites, like just a much more developed product mix. So it was like going back in time a little bit. And I used to say that to my colleagues to be like, like there's this company in Atlantic Canada who's like doing this at like a really high level that like, we've already seen this. So yeah, I was able to kind of just like use a lot of my experience and things that I'd done at TC and the Telegram, and just kind of be like, look, like we got to try these things, do these things, take these approaches. And then it was like pretty successful. Like the big difference between working in St. John's at TC and then working with Star Metro in Edmonton was like that Telegram brand in the St. John's was a lot stronger than what the Star Metro brand was in Edmonton. So obviously like you'd go into a car dealer and be like, well, look, like, we were the number one paper because of the nature of free daily. And then obviously numbers and stats. You worked in radio, this. Anyone's the number one at any given time, at any given demo.
Yeah.
But and then just really became like, if people believe in you, they'll believe in your product, and that's what we did a lot of. But yeah.
Funny, as you're talking, you reminded me. We had 16 actual properties. What used to actually give me a lot of trepidation was when a new social media came out. So you think about this, every single one of our papers had a Facebook page. Then, Instagram and all, like as these new entities in social media came out, I mean, it was challenging to say the least, trying to keep on top of how we were going to do all this.
And the reader doesn't care.
No.
Because to them, they're like, well, you're the packet.
Yeah.
And why isn't the packet on Facebook? Like, they don't care that you got, 2 papers in Labrador, the Telegram. They're just like, so anyway, yeah, so in Edmonton, yes, that was the big thing, like a lot of like prospecting, a lot of like cold calls. The big thing at the Telegram, we just used to go into a business, like whether advertising or not, and be like, what's going on? Like, how's business? Like, and we just have these open conversations.
Showing up unannounced was accepted.
100%. And then in Edmonton, they did like less of that. Like they really catered to their existing advertiser base, and like obviously Edmonton's a bigger city, a much more like vibrant business community, just based on numbers. And I'd be like, oh, like we should just go in there and just see what's going on. They'd be like, what do you mean, what's going on? You're just gonna go in? I was like, yeah, we're gonna go in. We're gonna find the sales manager, and we're just gonna be like, what are you doing? And we're gonna have a paper in our hand, and we're gonna see what happens. And that was like really successful. That was like revolutionary to there. Yeah, and that was really good, and some like obviously like that also got us thrown out of a lot of businesses, and they just be like, don't waste our time, yada yada. We're committed to these things, but yeah, like a lot of that kind of like, I don't want to say like Newfoundland mantra, but very much that like curiosity. I think that like benefited a lot. Yeah, and then it was we talk about turnover. Like there was a lot of turnover there because again, like Alberta has a lot of opportunity, and like, it's a very public facing job. So like if you walk in somewhere and they're like, geez, I like this person, I bet they'd help my business, they'll just offer you a job right on the spot. And like Alberta business owners are really aggressive, they're really competitive. So, I mean, that's how I ended up my next job. Was I was in with a personal injury lawyer, and I was talking to him. I was like, look, like, there's a lot of risk here. Like you guys have a lot of downside risk based on, you're not approaching the market in a certain way, and your competitors are going to eventually. He's like, do you want, like, what are you going to do? And then he was just like, you should come work here. It's like, and at that point I'd been at newspapers for 7 years, and I'd always wanted to work in injury law. Like I don't know if when we worked, I was always like, geez, like there's lots of injury lawyers around. They got big marketing budgets. It's really aggressive. They're really competitive. And then I really liked this injury lawyer who I was talking to. I was like, I could work for this person. Like this would be awesome. This would be fun. So yeah, then I went and started there as director of marketing, and did that for 4.5 years, and yeah, like really, like yeah, with that team, really kind of built, like helped redefine and re-entrench that brand in the marketplace, and did a lot of cool stuff and really modernized their marketing framework. And then yeah, after 4.5 years, I got to a place where it was in a good place, and they wanted to go in a, like I'd moved back to St. John's.
Before you go down that road, I want to ask you something, because I spent 20-something years being the advisor, the consultant, but I didn't actually have to sit in the marketing chair.
Yeah.
So it was easy to come and go and say, oh, give them all these recommendations and then walk away.
Yeah.
Let me ask you how it was to be in the marketing chair and now be the person responsible for the marketing. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, I mean, it was exciting. It was something that we always joke about. being in the sales role and then the advisor role, being like, geez, if I just had that job, or man, if I could just, give me 2 weeks in that place, I'd turn it around. And then you're sat there and you're like, well, these are all my problems now. And I was a big eliminate excuses guy. So if I went to my boss, who was awesome, really open, very direct,
Lawyer?
He's an injury lawyer, yeah. And and then I just go to him and be like, this is what's in our way. And he'd be like, well, knock it down. And I'd be like, okay. And that was it. So as soon as I sat in the chair and I was like, oh, well, this is limiting us. Well, we got to get rid of these excuses. So the point, eventually, any reason we're not performing as we should, any excuse you come up with, if it existed after a certain amount of time, well, congrats, you're fired.
Yeah.
And that was it. So, I thought a lot about, some of the role models and business mentors I had who had said, it's not good enough to say, yeah, we're going to, let's just do what we did last year. It was no, raise it 10%, grow the business. And if not, get a new job.
Yeah.
And injury lawyers by nature are really competitive. They're great business people. They're if they see a challenge, they want to overcome it. And they're really client focused and whatnot. Yeah. So being in that role, I was just like, this is the best. This is just, what a great job. What a great decision. I love it here. I can't believe that I get to just every day come in and run this marketing program and work with these awesome people. And yeah, it was really great. It was a big risk to leave sales and leave digital media to go into injury law, which isn't tech or isn't, cool or sexy to a lot of people, but it was to me and still is.
So you're there and some changes start happening. Tell us about that.
So on a personal note, I moved back to Newfoundland. So I'd been there 9 months, and then I went into my boss and I was like, and this is pre-COVID, so this story is much more out of left field. I went in, I was like, hey, as you know, I'm from St. John's, Newfoundland. My wife's got a great job offer back there, and we're gonna go, so I can help you find my replacement, but I can't do. And he was like, why don't you work from home? Why don't you just work remotely?
What year would this have been?
This would have been the spring of 2019.
Wow, this is very forward thinking.
Yeah, it was March. He said, he was like, look, I travel a lot. I'm taking a lot of vacations, or I don't most of our dialogue is on the phone when I'm driving to appointments, doing whatever. So as long as you can answer your phone, you can have this job, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool, yeah, we'll try it. And then, so we were trying it for, I moved back, say July, and then, we were kind of experimenting and trying it out and doing Zoom and stuff that now seems second nature, and this all seems so funny. But and then it was going great, and then COVID happens and everyone's working from home, and we're off to the races ahead of the game.
Yeah.
And then my reps and vendors who I was relying on to buy media or to run certain things, they were like, hey, I got to try the Zoom thing. Can I demo it with you? Because we've already been talking on the phone. So I became kind of the work from home, guinea pig, I guess, for a lot of the reps and stuff to test their stuff.
It's funny, and you probably know this, when I had the responsibility of all of Newfoundland and I had part of Nova Scotia and then Saskatchewan, I used to use Google Meets, if you remember.
Yeah.
And I remember the people on the receiving end of that were frustrated. Some of them couldn't figure out how to use it, but it was commonplace. I was in St. John's. I had reps all over the country. It made sense to be remote, right?
Yeah, no, and then, so I worked remote there for 3 years, I guess. And really, there are rightfully so, they kind of, the law firm I worked at kind of recognized, it would be nice to have the person back in the city. They wanted to do a lot more in-person activations, switch to a lot more community partnership type marketing. I think that they had saw that they had done as much broad-based and targeted marketing as you could do, and they wanted to shift and try something else. And I wasn't in a position to be able to go in that direction because I kind of had set up roots here. So we made the choice to part ways, and they kind of went more of that choice, and they're doing excellent. And I started Rockbound.
So as I said to you before we hit record, that description of how you started Rockbound is very, I wouldn't call it flippant, but it's there's a lot more to that than what you just said. So tell us a little bit about the time frame between how long it took for you to transition and then go, or was it one day this ended and then Rockbound started, or was
No.
it something you had percolating in your head for a year or two?
Everyone always wants, like, I don't know if everyone, but anyone in sales is always like, well, I just want to start my own thing. I'm going to do my own thing. Yeah, for me, I think I left the law firm in June, and it's summer. So I was in a position where I didn't have to go like start a job right away. So yeah, I took some time to like think about, well, I was applying for jobs. I like made my resume, cover letters. I was like, I wanted to get another job because that's just, you know, I mean, I've never been out of work, I guess, at that time. So I guess there was a lot of like personal things where it's like, well, I gotta get another job. Like I gotta get back in. Like I don't want this to be on the shelf.
Yeah.
But then I was also, but anyway, yes, and I was applying for jobs, and I was like, the jobs I was seeing were like really specialized. They were really like, it would like, as a director of marketing, I was like running the Google Ads campaign. I was doing media buying. I was helping with website direction. I was like,
you're hands-on.
Yeah, I was doing everything. Like, or I was involved in everything. And now whether I was outsourcing some stuff or I was keeping stuff in house, like, you know, I think about that T marketer where it's like, you know a little bit about everything, but you're really deep in a few things. Well, I was trying to become like an H or an M, you know, I was trying to be, so to take that director role and then kind of apply for some of these jobs that were like Google ad strategist, which is a great role and obviously like should be a specialized role in a lot of situations. And then, you know, whether it was like media planning or just like really specialized stuff. And I'd get the interviews and I'd do them and I'm like, geez, you know, like I don't really think I want to be the person who's just like living in the Google Ads platform or an ads editor every day. Like I just think that I wouldn't like that. And then, so then, you know, and admittedly, I wasn't having like great success in the job market. It's not like there was like 50 opportunities and I was like, none of these will do. You know, it was like one or two offers. I was like, oh, I don't really know if this is the answer. And then I wanted to still work remote, or like I wanted to, like I was living in St. John's. I'm not moving. Like that's, you know, my wife's job is here and is a very stable and kind of job that she really loves. So like, it's not like I'd be like, hey, like let's move back to Alberta or let's, you know, move to San Francisco or whatever. That wasn't on.
Yeah.
Nor did I want to. Like my family and friends are here and stuff. So I didn't want to leave either. So I was like, well, you know, job hunt not going great. The roles that I want or that I think I'm capable of, I'm either not getting an opportunity to get, or it's not like working out. I should just make the job I want to have. So that was Rockbound.
And that started when?
October of 2023.
June to October. It's interesting. Yeah, I'm really interested in timelines. So July, August, September, you're searching for jobs. It is summer.
Like searching for jobs while I'm like camping. I'm swimming. Like we went to the Yukon and Northwest Territories on like, you know, an awesome RV trip. You know, like there was lots of great. So it's not like I was just like sitting at home all day being like, well, maybe I'll try this cover letter. Like, you know, I applied for maybe a few dozen jobs, but like it wasn't.
But you know what's interesting about what you just said? Very creative time, I would imagine. You know, you're camping, but you're obviously thinking about what's next. You're not just wasting time, right?
No, yeah. I mean, yeah. Like
so, you're stepping back, right?
Definitely from certainly the pressure and the like the what's it called? The treadmill of like injury law marketing at like a very specific place. Yeah, so you know, and that's like a big time in media planning. Obviously, like the upfronts are happening, and like so it was a weird time to like not be like making decisions and like being in the job. But yeah, I was certainly reading lots of books. I was I did some courses, like, you know, try to upskill a bit because I was like, okay, well, I've been working in like search engine optimization for this law firm for 4 years, and I can point to like a lot of success we've had, but you know, for a lot of the jobs I was applying for, that like wasn't good enough. Yeah. So I was like, oh, well, I'll take this course in SEO and then try to like provide a little more legitimacy to that. I'll try to like learn a few things that I think could be nice to do. Yeah, so I definitely did that. Like in that time, I, you know, kind of like refreshed some of like my web development training or some search engine optimization stuff. Tried to like challenge my perceptions of like what marketing is in 2023, I guess at the time. And but no, it was like, you know, it was a mix of like being unemployed and trying to like, you know, I don't want to make this sound like it was this like, you know, downtrodden woe is me thing, but it was also like, you know, how do I like find value in like what I'm doing day to day, for sure.
Yeah. And look, with all that skill set, it's interesting though, Jeff, that I find even for me with all my skill set, it was somewhat difficult to figure out that value proposition because you are still like, you're still job searching. And it's funny, I said to this young lady the other day, she's in a job search. And I said, that's what I've done for 30 years. I've been in the job search mode. Being in business development, you're constantly searching for your next client.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you're no different than that job search, really, right?
Yeah, it's just a way bigger sale.
Yeah.
But yeah, like for me, then I was like, yeah, well, I want to work remotely, or I want to live in St. John's, and that's where I want to work out of. And I want to work in marketing, and I want to work in like digital marketing, but still a bit of traditional media and stuff. So then I knew that there was this opportunity with law firms where, 20 years ago, their marketing was like, it was pretty straight. It was like Yellow Pages, have a website and like do some community partnerships, and like, then depending on like how aggressive you wanted to be, maybe you do some radio or a bit of print or whatever. But now that's really changed a lot for like any business, right? Like there's social media, there's Google, like organic search, paid search, Yellow Pages are gone, but clients are still trying to find you. So I was like, they're struggling with that in the Canadian landscape, or they like need a little, like they either need a little more guidance or, just like want some support and stuff. So I was like, oh, well, like maybe I'll kind of take that skill set that I honed at the Western Canadian law firm and try to pitch that to like other law firms and be like, look, like I can help you scale up. I can help you make sure your marketing budget is being used a little more effectively. So then I was like, I'm gonna start Rockbound and try to like, I didn't want it to be like this big thing, and like it isn't on a variety of levels. But I was like, I'm gonna try to like start a marketing consultancy like tailored to law firms. So in October I was like, all right, like this is it. Like I will start.
So let me ask you this question for every entrepreneur is you get your first client. You don't need to mention who it is, or you can if you want, but I think back to ours when we got our first client. It's kind of two happened at the same time, Genoa Design International and the Newfoundland Labrador Construction Association. When that actually happens, it's so exciting. Tell us a little bit about what it was for you.
Well, they had already like, they knew that I had left the law firm, and they were just like, why don't you help us with some of our stuff? Like we're small, whatever. And so it wasn't like as exciting because it was kind of like the same moment where I was like, I should start something with this, and they were also like, you should help us with marketing. So it was like a little different where it was like I think the story of getting my second client was like way more exciting because that was like really the
validation.
That was like, this is like a thing. So the first client was obviously like, do great work. They're like, investing a lot in me to give them results, like make sure that works and stuff. And we were kind of growing our business together at the same time. So like that was really exciting on a personal note, like really rewarding. But then the second client was like, they were like, we want to scale up, we want to grow, we need someone to lead that. And like, you have this thing you're doing, this Rockbound, like how do we get involved in that? And then that was like, well, okay, there is a need here, there is demand, like let's do it. And so that was exciting as well. And
so they found out about you through some of the circles that you were operating in.
A lot of this has been like reputational growth where they knew that I was at like a successful, prominent law firm, and then they were like, well, we would like to be a successful or more successful, more prominent.
You're not dropping in with the newspaper.
No, not yet. And then from there, and then it's mostly the same story all the time. It's like people either have heard of, like, because the legal community is a small community, so like if someone's like, whoa, I noticed you're doing something really good, and then they're like, I hired Rockbound, and they're like, oh, well, like we should hire Rockbound, and then so then we just go from there.
So that was 2023.
So I got my first like October, and then probably in the new year I got my second and third and fourth.
So you right now are in your first anniversary month.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy when you think about it.
Well, it's funny, for the people watching, Jeff and I, as you know, you heard the early part, we worked together. When he told me that he had gone out on his own, I get really excited by that because there's nothing more exciting to me than someone who's generating revenue for themselves out on their own. it's not easy. You know, there's a lot of trepidation. Right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, I don't think of myself as an entrepreneur. Like, I don't think I'm like entrepreneurial or whatever. Yeah, and like, I think that entrepreneurship like found me as like where like I had these like wants or needs that I couldn't fulfill. Like, I couldn't get the job I wanted, so I tried to make it, and then I did, and great for now. Like, right, it's only a year. Like, who knows? But yeah, it's certainly interesting. Like, yeah, that you know, you have these clients, they trust you to help build and grow their business. You try to give them insights that are actionable and make a difference. And then you also challenge them, like you say, like, look, like, do you want to be fourth place forever?
Yeah.
Or do you want to be first? And obviously, like, lawyers are competitive and I'm competitive. So like, I think that's a good match, but I don't like think of myself as an entrepreneur or, you know, yeah, like that's just, I don't see it that way. Like, I mean, and I know that sounds weird because like everyone I talk to now, I don't really talk about Rockbound a ton on a personal note, but whenever I do, they're like, "Oh, you're like an entrepreneur. You're like you're your own boss." And I'm like, "Well, no, I just have 6 bosses now, or 8 or 10 or whatever." Like, it's not like, yeah, it's not like as glamorous as I probably thought. You know, I mean, I thought that I'd be like, "Well, today I'm going to work from Deer Lake Beach, and tomorrow I'll be in Gross Moor," and it's like, no, I'm actually at my house way more now.
Yeah. Well,
Than
you
when I was
know,
in sales.
on that note, you're right. I mean, the glamour of entrepreneurship is when you're actually in it. It's almost like travel. It's funny, I heard some people last week talking about travel, and this guy's traveled a lot. It's actually my cousin. And there's the travel piece is, there's the glamour around that is not fun. You know, you're away from the people you love and all that. Business can be like that because the pressure on you to get something done, you know, I do like the flexibility, Jeff, of being able to, you know, if I want to go out this afternoon and do something, well, actually this afternoon's not a good example because I have worked for a client, but there is flexibility there, isn't
Absolutely,
there? You know?
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, I think a lot about, so like Bowring Park has an outdoor swimming pool, and then there's like a lane swim, and I've since learned to swim more as an adult. So I'm like, you know, now like I used to look at the lane swim schedule and be like, oh, I'm not sure if I can make it or whatnot. Where now it's like, I'm never going to miss one.
Yeah.
Because I just schedule my day as such, and you know, work time zones to your advantage and stuff like that. But yeah, no, the flexibility, it's certainly like, it has way more flexibility than most jobs. But then you know, in my case, like, you know, and I guess yours, like you still have like, you know, the client, and you got to like make sure they're happy. It was funny, a few weeks ago, I went into the weekend and I joked, I was like, all my clients are happy right now. This is great. And, you know, we'll see how that, you know, I mean, obviously, you know, you still like try things. It doesn't meet the expectation or work like you thought or whatnot. But yeah, no, I mean, it's all my law clients are at as I sit here today, they're all relatively happy, I think.
Well, let me ask you about that. So right now you're very hyper focused on the legal community, but will you take on others?
If there's a fit, like, I think that my skill set and like, you know, they have to have like a reasonable marketing budget. They need to have goals and objectives that are measurable. You know, it needs to be something where like you can do a lot of the work from St. John's, and like I think law checks a lot of those boxes. Yeah, like I would take on clients that aren't in the legal space. I worked with a home builder semi-recently. You know, first it was injury law, and then I took on a family and criminal lawyer. And, you know, then that was a big deviation from injury law. So then you're like, you know, this is, you know, different clients and like a different audience and stuff. But no, I mean, right now, like, law is the focus, and that's like what finds me. And then there's lots of people, you know, like I think about like HVAC or dentists or like any of the other verticals that have like solo entrepreneurs like myself in them. And like there's thousands of people that are doing great work in that. So like I don't really see the need for me to like try to like make myself into one of those marketers where it's like, look, like I understand law marketing really well. I like law marketing. That's what I'm going to do. Yeah. But, you know, if someone, you know, you never say no to an opportunity, but I don't think an opportunity outside of law is probably going to find me. We'll see though. I mean, here I am on Gale Force. So maybe one of your audience will be like, oh, we'll give that person a try.
You know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to publicly endorse you because, you know, my experience working with you is that you were one of the brightest digital minds that I ever encountered. And I've been around a lot.
Oh, thank you.
Well, it's true. And I don't throw that out loosely. it's, the fact that you now are being able to provide value for clients using your own ingenuity and your own business is really important. That's why I wanted you to be on this, despite the fact that it brings back a lot of really great memories. I think that, the niche that you've developed is interesting because a lot of people ask me, Gale Force Wins, how do you guys make money? Well, a YouTube video that reaches 100 people, if 99 of them are business people,
Yeah.
that's a niche that very few people have, and getting in the head of a CEO is not easy. So we get hired to go all over the world because people are watching this. A lot of problems I see, and I want to get, before we clue this up, is get your opinion on this. If you're chasing likes, if you're chasing views, I'm not sure, like it's hitting the right person at the right time, Jeff. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So in the injury law space, I'll speak to, because that's what I work in currently. No one plans to get in a motor vehicle accident, and most people aren't prepared for that. Like you have to have car insurance. It's a legislative requirement. But do you have the right amount of insurance and whatnot? So it's not like there's a lot of pre-planning. It's not like real estate or automotive where 3, 6, 9 months out. My lease is expiring, my mortgage is coming due. My family's expanding, I need a bigger house. All those are planned purchases. Whereas injury law, it's very much like you're in a motor vehicle accident and now you are thrust into that consumer journey. So it's really not about building likes or followers or whatnot. It's about having the best information that's going to make that injured victim understand that you can represent them, you understand what they're going through, and you're going to get them the result they want. So it's about compassion, authenticity, and meeting the clients where they are, or the injured victims. And so it's very different than how a lot of other industries approach marketing. And it's especially like with injury law, like you'll see lots of ads for injury lawyers, and they won't really resonate with you because you're not in marketing for that. And unless you've ever been in that, you actually don't really see it. But then, when if you're unfortunately, if you're put in that scenario where you need an injury lawyer, all of a sudden, your entire kind of focus and whatnot changes. So that's a big piece with a lot of my clients who do social media, where it's like, oh geez, that post only got 4 likes or 3 likes, whatever. It's like, yeah, but when that person comes to when an injured victim comes to your social media feed and they go on Instagram and they look you up to go, gee, I wonder what they're about. Like, I've seen their ad, I've heard their ad on the radio. Let's see if they actually walk the walk and walk the talk. And then they go there and they see, oh, there's a lot of information here. They're in the community. They're winning awards. They're doing whatever. Okay, like this is the person I'm going to trust with my future, because that is what's at stake in an injury loss scenario. Like if you're someone who's injured in a motor vehicle accident, and you can't work anymore, or something's changed with your enjoyment of life, like that decision you make is really important. And that's what I try to get my injury lawyers to communicate through that, is that you can trust them.
Yeah. Jeff, what you just described is very important work, and I commend you for doing what you're doing. We're going to talk now 53 minutes. I want to ask you this to end the podcast. Based on the experience you've had, we always ask people, give us a piece of advice. And it can be, digital marketing advice, life advice, business advice. I don't care.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give our viewers today?
Yeah. So for me, and you didn't tell me this in advance, so this is kind of I'm kind of just free forming here, but
we saved the toughest question for last.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So for me, it's 2 things. Number 1 is everything works. Everything in marketing works on some level. Like, everyone tries to get into this discussion of like, well, this works better than that, or this is where you should spend your money, or you're not doing this, or you must be crazy, you must be stupid. But everything works on some level, and it is about finding what's best. But as long as you're doing something or thinking about marketing, you're already a step ahead. And then the other thing is that, and this is something that I thought about a lot in my career, everyone's trying their best. Like we talked about, people don't seem urgent enough, or people, they seem aloof or slow on the up, but everyone's trying their best. Like no one comes into work and goes like, oh, I want to do a bad job today. Everyone is doing the best they can. So I think that positivity and that grace and that level of patience, I think that's something that I didn't have early in my career. and I just like couldn't tolerate sometimes work, like, you know, whether it was my limitations or other people's. But now I'm just like, look, like, you know, whether I see a social media post from RBC or from a place on the corner, I'm like, well, that's, you know, they tried their best on that.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of go from there.
Well,
What I do. Was that good?
That was fantastic. I loved it. Thanks for that. Last question. How do people find you? Tell us your website and however way you want people to find you.
Yeah, so they can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way. And then
Jeff Lush or Jeffrey?
Jeffrey Lush, yeah.
Jeffrey.
And then yeah, I have a website, rockboundmarketing.com. And they can kind of learn about what I'm doing there and whatnot. But yeah, for now, I mean, you know, if you're an injury lawyer and you're out in market, like I've probably found you already.
Well, folks, it's been an absolute pleasure to reconnect with my old friend, Jeff Lush. As I said, and I don't use this lightly, one of the brightest digital marketing minds that I have encountered. Did a lot of amazing work for us at the Telegram when you were there, Jeff. And it's been a pleasure reconnecting. I wish you all the best. Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
I'm sure there's many, many more years to come.
Yeah, you as well. Thanks. And congratulations on everything you've built here at Gale Force.
Thank you for tuning in to Gale Force Wins. That's Gale Force Wins, WINS.com.